Scrum, the framework. The framework Scrum. Well, why is it a framework, first of all? Right? Ever thought about it? Why is it a framework? It's called framework because it doesn't give you the house. It gives you a couple of whats of what to do. Restructures the way you work, but doesn't tell you how to develop whatever you have to develop, right? Scrum was built around 3 main set of concepts. The first one was the paper that Joe was telling about, was telling us over the pizza yesterday.
Rob and Pat were not with us, sadly.
This paper was written in 1986 by 2 guys. Those 2 guys are
Dr. Gray?
No. Takeuchi and
These are all 3.
Takeuchi and Nonaka. They are Japanese, right?
Ah.
They are actually the fathers of knowledge management. That's very cool. What's the thing here in this paper? Look at that. You have people perspective, you have process perspective, and you have product perspective. That's a very cool take on Scrum. People perspective is in this paper. What they find in this paper, my take on this paper is, what they actually say is, they tell stories. They tell stories about companies that were pretty innovative, that built innovative products back in the 80s, like for example Honda, Fujitsu, Xerox, Canon, right? And
should we not be snacking while you're talking? Because we're like totally enjoying, and
you can snack. You can.
It doesn't drive you nuts.
No.
Would you like some pretzel?
No. That's not driving nuts. I can't eat and talk at the same time, right? So the thing here in this paper, they point out 6 characteristics of the teams in those innovative companies that manage to come up with innovative products. So they pretty much state that if you want innovation to be part of your DNA, your teams got to have those characteristics here. That's one possible interpretation of this paper. Okay, so built-in and stability, self-organizing teams, overlapping development phases, multi-learning, subtle control, and organizational transfer of learning.
Instability, as in
Instability,
not working?
as in unstable. That's the point. Built-in instability here means shaking the team's ground. If you think of a team maturity graph, maturity in teams or productivity or performance, it tends to remain stable for some time until somebody comes and shakes everything through constraints, pressure, rules, needs, and everybody starts to shake it up again so that this performance will be able to start growing up again. That's what this thing means. Who does that in a Scrum team? Scrum Masters. Okay? Self-organizing team, I'll have, after lunch, we will have an exercise about what is self-organization. We will need more space, so I believe we're going to do that outside. It's not that cold, right? I want to talk about, I'm going to be talking about many of those here during training, but the last one deserves some attention right now because it's about knowledge management, right? What is knowledge management? Well, the metaphor of the word Scrum is used here in this paper to explain, rugby game, right? Rugby has a formation similar to the American football scrimmage. I played rugby. Well, don't believe me, but I did play. I was 17, 16 years old back in
What position
college.
did you?
I was a forward.
Specifically in the Scrum, were you a prop?
I was,
Lock?
I don't remember the name.
Were you the first row or the second
I
row?
was in the first row.
You were prop.
Prop.
I was a lock. I was right behind you.
Okay.
Right behind.
So you have only big guys, right, playing? Because look at me and look at him. It's bigger than me.
It's like football.
The hooker was really small. And some
The
of
hooker was
back
small,
hookers-
yeah, the hooker was small. So the pointing in Scrum is you push against the other forwards so that the ball becomes, which is thrown in the middle of the scrum by the referee, and you gotta push that, and the hooker will try to pick the ball, and the more you push the better.
And to push
The
it back.
easier the hooker's gonna push the ball back, so that the ball becomes visible to the line guide on the back of the formation. And once he picks up the ball,
Picks up the ball.
what happens?
He
He
dishes it
stands
off.
there, right?
Yeah, he
Right.
stands there and gets three
Stands there, 2 to 3 seconds, gets
killed.
eaten out
Yeah.
by the opposite team. So that's the metaphor. Once he picks up the ball, he has to put the ball back into the game as fast as possible. So it's quick decision making, fast decision making, teamwork, team spirit. Based on what? On the strategy that you develop with the team, right? During the scrum or before the scrum, right? And based on the position of the opposite team. So that's the metaphor. So that you take the ball downfield and do the touchdown. Touchdown in Scrum is called the try. Okay? Just try. So that's the metaphor. They use the metaphor for the first time here in this paper. And my take on Scrum is that it goes beyond being a framework for project management, but it's also it can also be seen as a knowledge management framework. It's very powerful because if you think of Scrum as a knowledge management framework, it's hey, we can implement this thing here to build innovative products, right? Yeah, it's a catalyzer for innovation in a company. Why that? Because we focus on people, right? The second lag here, the time box, is the process perspective. So everything in Scrum's time box. This is really the difference between any waterfallish model we have around, right? Like the spiral model, for example. What's the main difference? That in Scrum everything's time boxed. Everything's time boxed, and the Scrum Master has to understand that because we have 4 ceremonies in Scrum. We're going to work right after lunch, and those ceremonies, they are time boxed too. So the first time I applied Scrum, I had a sprint planning. It took me 3 days, and the second time it took me 4 days. It sounds very stupid, right? But why does this happen? This happened because I didn't have the process perspective, the perspective of a Scrum Master. It's the perspective of someone who's constantly improving upon the process, making sure that you have the right inputs on time there, ready and set before each ceremony.
Now, is time box just a time limitation to it?
That's it. What's a time box? It's a limited amount of time, a period of time. That's all. It doesn't matter what you are doing during the time box and what, if you finish, what you have to do. Right?
Okay.
So
So like
time
we have
box.
1 week iterations.
A time box is can be one iteration.
Okay.
A time box can be 15 minutes. It can be our time box for our coffee break. It doesn't
Gotcha.
matter if you go for the coffee break or not. Our time box for lunch is 45 minutes. If you finish your lunch over this 45 minutes or not, it's your problem. The time box is over. So the only thing we know about a time box once it begins is when it ends. That's all. Right? The main time box in Scrum is called the sprint. Okay? And if you really think about it, you're going to see that it's the concept in Scrum that puts pressure on people. Right? Pressure, and we already spoke about that, it can be very positive, right? Once you understand people's limit. And I believe that in the creation process, a deadline is fundamental. If you don't have deadlines in the creation process, you are not a software engineer, you're not a product engineer, you are an artist. Go paint, go paint.
Go paint it.
Go painting, yeah. So, software development, for example, is it a pure engineering discipline? What do you think? Or is it like painting a Picasso, right?
would venture to say engineering is also more like painting a Picasso, than a lot of people say,
Yeah.
right? So, is software development pure engineering?
The third leg here, that's the input from software development in Scrum. Iterative incremental development. What is this thing here? It's just about building the same product incrementally. One iteration at a time, you work and you increment the same product. That's the point here, right? So if you put those three things in a blender, what do you get? You get the main ideas behind Scrum. People, process, and product perspective, right? The framework is comprised by a simple set of values and principles, a simple set of rules, a process with 4 ceremonies: sprint planning, the sprint review, and sprint retrospective, and 3 roles, right? Scrum Master, the product owner, and the development team, and 2 artifacts: product backlog and sprint backlog. Easy. You don't need a training to understand those things,
Right.
right? I believe you received the PDF that I sent you. Do you need a training to understand what is written here? I don't think so, because it's very easy. You just have to understand, well, what's the sprint planning? What is it for? What's the daily Scrum? When should this happen? You should understand the architecture of Scrum. Sprint planning happens here, so you plan what's going to happen in the duration in the sprint. Every day you inspect and adapt in the daily Scrum, and at the end you have a checkpoint. That's when you stop and gather feedback.
Right.
Stop and ask about the feedback. Is this touching your heart? Is this rhyming? Right? Give me feedback at product level so I can know better and I can do better in the next iteration. And also the team stops this checkpoint and inspects for later adaptation about the process. That's what happens in the sprint retrospective. And that's it, right? So what's the whole deal about, why is it so hard to implement Scrum, right? And that's what I want you to grasp now.
Long-held prejudices.
I'm going to give you, keep that in mind. So I need you to stand up everyone, and come here. Stand up, everyone.